OCR investigations and you're involved, and I'll sort of guide you through that sort of process and interviews with the OCR or the EEOC or something like that. So normally I'm there to help, but every once in a while, you might see me on the other side of the table. Hopefully that will never be the case. And so that's why I'm here to make sure that you are never on the wrong side of the table, because I don't like to lose. So that's bad for you. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what can get you fired. Please raise your hand. Please, let's have a discussion about this. If there's any questions at all, it'll be more enjoyable for you and the time will go faster as well. When we get to certain segments, I've got some real life stories that will maybe bring some of the issues home and help you remember. So, all y'all are probationary teachers, correct? All right. So, probationary teachers, the first part's going to be a little dry, but it's things you need to know. You all are on one-year contracts that expire June 30th of this year. And if you are not notified of anything, or but more likely you will be notified on or before April 15th whether or not you have a contract for next year. If you receive no notification by April 15th, you're automatically hired for next year. So no news is good news. But almost always you will get a notice on or before April 15th on whether or not you've been hired for the next school year. As you are probably aware, you will receive tenure on the first day of your 6th year. You've got to actually come to work your 6th year in order for tenure to be granted. A lot of times you guys, teachers will think, oh, I've put my 5 years in, your contract for the 6th year will say permanent teacher, but unless you come to work that next year, you don't have tenure yet. If you happen to work in Francis House School District for 2 or more years and you go to another school district to work, you will get credit for at least 1 year towards tenure. So you won't have to do the entire 5 years, but you'll have to do 4 more years in order, no matter how many years you've done here. If you don't have tenure yet, you'll have to do 1 more year. If you have tenure here and you go to another school district, you have to work 1 full year before you get tenure in that district. Any questions about that? Once you have tenure, you have what's called a permanent contract. And that's not on this slide, but I'll just give you a little heads up. You'll have a permanent contract that really all the district has to do is notify you what your new salary is the next year. But it's in order to get terminated after you have tenure, you're going to have to go through a process that we're going to talk about. And it's the same process that would have to go through if you were terminated mid-contract, or say before June 30th when your contract ends. However, if they're notified before April 15th that we don't need your services next year, the district doesn't have to give you a reason why. It can be for any or no reason. Just have to notify you before April 15th. Okay, so why can a teacher be terminated, a probationary teacher be terminated during the term of the contract? And it's the same exact reasons that a permanent teacher can be terminated. And that is, there's 6 reasons. Physical or mental condition unfitting to instruct or associate with children, immoral conduct, incompetency, inefficiency, or insubordination in the line of duty. We're going to talk, that one has an asterisk, we're going to talk about that one in a minute. Willful or persistent violation of or failure to obey the school laws of the state or the published regulations of the Board of Education, in other words, the policies, school board policies. Excessive or unreasonable absences, or conviction of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. Any questions on any of those 6 reasons? Does everybody understand what they mean? Okay. So, in order to be terminated for incompetency mid-contract, remember I put an asterisk by that one, incompetency, inefficiency, or insubordination in line of duty. In order to be terminated for incompetency, it can't just be done, you can't just get a notice of charges and boom, you're going to be terminated for that. You have to first be given a written notice stating what the district believes or your supervisor believes is your areas of incompetency. And as a probationary teacher, you have 90 days in which to correct that incompetency. If you're a tenured teacher, the same rules apply except for you only have 30 days to show improvement. But as a probationary teacher, you get 90 days to correct the fault. And only if you make insufficient progress can you then be terminated mid-year. Now, there's no legal requirement for inefficiency and insubordination to give you that 90 days to improve, but most school districts provide the 90 days for those two reasons as well. So what do you have to do? So in order to be terminated mid-contract, mid-year, the school district needs to provide you with what's called a notice of charges that details what it is that you have done wrong. It has to cite one of those 6 reasons. If the reason is incompetency, inefficiency, or insubordination, the notice has to state that you've been given that cure period in order to improve. And then you'll be noticed of a hearing date. There's lots of time frames that you have to be met by per statute. I won't really bore you about that, but there will then actually be a hearing before the Board of Education. And the hearing is truly like a mini trial. There will be a court reporter there. I will be there presenting the case on the behalf of the administrators. You, if you are a member of FHNEA, will likely have an attorney provided by them. And each side, it's just like on TV, a little trial. But the school board sits in judgment and they make the decision. Okay, so what are some reasons that probationary teachers are simply not renewed for the next school year? You don't have it's just, you've been notified before April 15th. Sorry, we don't want you back next year. So the most frequent reasons I see are failure to get along with your coworkers, failure to get along with administrators, lack of classroom management. Oh, sorry. I think you did, thank you. Lack of classroom management, and social media issues, which we are going to talk about quite a bit in a few minutes. Okay, so I would just make a note of these reasons that probably it's going to be one of these 4 reasons that you aren't renewed if that happens. So make an effort to get along with others, especially. Okay. Any questions on that, on why you can be terminated and how you are terminated? Not a very pleasant discussion, so let's move on to something a little bit more interesting. Social media and electronic communication issues. Okay, so you guys have a policy. I would encourage you to read it. It is policy, there's 2 of them. Policy 6335. And then there's a procedure for that as well. So I would ask you to look at those 2 very carefully and closely, because there's very stringent rules on your communications with students. So let's talk first about social media relationship with students. Any communications with students must be professional in nature, school related, appropriate content, and FERPA compliant. Does everybody know what FERPA is? Everybody does. Okay, great. So here are some strong recommendations. Never friend students or parents on Facebook, or follow them on Twitter. Don't use Facebook Messenger ever with students or with parents. And never discuss students on your Facebook page, on your Twitter account, or anything else that you could possibly be using. WhatsApp, nothing.
Cindy, can you talk about, so sometimes we see teachers that'll post, like there was one yesterday that took a picture of a piece of student work, it didn't have a kid's name on it, and it was just a funny response that a kid gave. And so it was like, this is why I love my job, kind of tongue-in-cheek, and
Right.
It was a picture of the student's response. Again, no identifying information, but can you?
So I have a daughter who's a 2nd grade teacher, and she loves to post those sorts of things too, so I'm sort of like a policeman in my house. When I see that thing happen, she gets an email from me right away. it's dangerous, okay? You can block out names, but if there's any way that someone is gonna be able to like figure out who that kid is, you could be accused of a FERPA violation. So I would be extremely cautious if you do post work. I know that sometimes it's funny, but just really, really think about it beforehand and decide whether or not it's worth it. And I'm going to talk about a few situations where someone posted something that they thought there was no way anyone but a very select select group of people would see the post, and it didn't work out that way. I'm going to give you some examples in a couple of minutes here. It's better not to discuss students at all. You guys are young. You are in a generation that posts everything. It's like if it isn't posted, it didn't happen. I want you to be really, really cautious about that when it comes to your job, because you are dealing with a lot of minors, a lot of students. Parents are just as active on social media as the students are. Most of you, I think, are middle school and high school teachers. Is that right here? There's not a huge age difference between you all and your students. It's easy for you guys to be, have friends of a friend, perhaps. Some of you might be related to some kids that are the same age that could be friends with them. So you're not always aware of all of the connections where something that you post could get back to a student or a parent or an administrator. So I can't emphasize any strongly than I mean, just don't do it. So here's a couple of instances that I've dealt with this year alone. Just this year. This seems to be the issue of, every year seems to have sort of a theme, and this year it's social media issues. So a teacher in an elementary school, not in this school district, had a bad breakup with a boyfriend. She is 29 years old. When she was 22 years old, she was at a club, had too much to drink, was with her boyfriend at the time, went into the bathroom and they had sex. Someone came into the bathroom and videoed them having sex. A friend 8 years ago found the video and told her about it. So fast forward 7 years, she has a new boyfriend. They're practically living together. She tells the boyfriend about what happened. They have a really, really bad breakup. He goes and he finds the video and he emails it to the superintendent. And he says he's a parent in the school in which the teacher works, says that he is related to some parents that have kids in her classroom. He says that he can't believe that the school district hires people like this. He says that on her Facebook page are pictures of her smoking marijuana, of her obviously extremely intoxicated, and why didn't the school district do anything about this? The school district calls me, sends me the video, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna have all sorts of viruses on my computer someday. Sends me the video, what should we do? What do you think my advice was?
Fire.
They wanted to fire her, and that was not my advice, not right off the bat. I wanted to do a little bit more investigation. We didn't know when this video had been taken. We got this video out of the blue. We think, because that's what it says, it's from a parent in the school that she's at. But they don't say what school. They say that she's a second grade teacher. That's all they tell us. So we take a still shot and we send the picture of her face, just her face, to all of the principals and say, is this a teacher in your school? No one identifies her. We actually go through and we know that she's a new teacher in the district. That was in the email. We go through and the HR person spends literally 7 hours one day, her staff, looking at pictures of new teachers Then they expanded it to teachers who were hired up to 5 years ago looking for this teacher. Can't find it. So then they send the email to the IT department. The IT department somehow figures out that this is not a parent, it doesn't match any parent email in the school district, and they finally identify the person as a 30-something-year-old male who really has nothing to do with the school district. So it's amazing what your email address can tell about you, even though you're trying to be anonymous. So we think, it's just a prank. We can't identify the teacher. So about a month goes by, and the principal of the school has a fairly common name. And this individual thinks he's emailing, gets really crazy, thinks he's emailing the video to the building principal. He didn't get what he wanted from the superintendent, so dang it, he's going straight to where she works, the building that she works in. He thinks that's where he's emailing it, but he has the email address wrong because it's a common last name, there's other people in the district, and it goes to somebody else. It goes to somebody else in the school district who's not in HR, who's not a teacher. This person gets this interesting video emailed to him. He doesn't know what the heck is going on, but he has a friend who works in HR, and he just forwards it to her and says, don't want anything to do with this, I got this email. And it has some of the similar allegations in the body of the email. But he says what school it is. So now we know what school, we know kind of who he was trying to send it to because of who he emailed it to. And we go back to that school particularly, and we find the person who doesn't look anything like she did 7 years ago. Her hair's a different color, different cut. You don't really look the same in a club as you do in a second grade classroom every day. So she wasn't, but we figured out who it was. It was a PD day. So she gets a call from HR and says, can you come in, just leave PD and come on in. You're free to bring a union representative with you, but it's an extremely personal matter. It's up to you, but you might not want anyone else to know about it. And she says, I have a feeling I know what this is about. I'll be right there. So she comes over and she explains what had actually happened. That what I told you at the beginning of the story, that it was a bad breakout. He must have got it off of, she doesn't know where he found it. So because 7 or 8 years had gone by, because she had never posted it herself, because the video was not taken voluntarily by her, the district decided, because she was willing to press charges against the guy, she went straight from the school administration to the police, filed a police report, and went straight to the court to get a restraining order so that it's no longer being passed. And so she has not been terminated. But that was really, really close. That was very close. And it's still shaky. We don't know what's going to happen next. Another situation this year, a male employee, within the last 3 years, he was not a teacher, so he did not have a contract. He was an at-will employee, but he had lots and lots of contact with students. He was a security guard and an assistant football coach, and he decided he was going to try to be a rap star. And he had an alternative name. His rap name was different. And this is how these things get caught. An employee of the school district was at a Sunday dinner with relatives. Her niece also attended the school district, and part of dinner conversation was her niece talking about how this guy at his school, he was always flirting with all the female students, and some of the female students were flirting back, and he used to be a rap star, and they looked up there's a bunch of videos of rap songs that he did on YouTube, and here, look at this. And it was a pretty vulgar and really bad rap, really, really bad, that was promoting, a lot of illegal activity, but it had girls, they were in a bathtub, there were girls that were, you guys can probably go out and find this, but there were girls, and they were in thong bikinis, very, 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 and they had, and he was, there was a lot of improper behavior going on with girls' rear ends in his face. So it was very, very explicit. So he got called in, and he was, he had voluntarily put these on the internet. He was telling students about them openly in the school building, and he no longer works for the district, for that particular school district because of it. One more story. And this is...
I didn't realize you were coming for this,
I really want to really hammer this point home. And this next story will do that too. So we all know what's going on with national anthem and kneeling and big controversy and very diverse opinions about what some athletes are doing with regard to the national anthem, pro football players in general, mainly. And a teacher posted on a page that was a member-only page, a closed group on Facebook, her opinion on that, which was if the high school athletes at my school don't stand and honor the flag during the national anthem, they can just get that F back where they came from. Someone in that group took a, what do they call it? Screenshot and emailed it to that school's alumni page, to the administrators of the school, to many other people in the school with comments written next to it. This is the kind of teacher you have here. This is racist. I think it said get the F back to Africa, perhaps. So this is, this is who you have teaching our kids. It's a mostly minority school. So everyone is upset. Next school board meeting, it's packed with people who are wanting this teacher fired. Wants this teacher not to be in the same room with their kids. Alumni coming back saying, this is not right. We don't want someone with this opinion in our, this is, it's everybody's First Amendment rights. They can do what they, that's what this country's about. So there's a big discussion going on. The news is there. So this person thought she was posting in a safe place. There were no students, no parents, no one else in that group, but it just takes one person to think, I can't believe a teacher's doing this. And if there's a will, there's a way to get it out and make your life miserable. Now that teacher has First Amendment rights too. She's not getting fired, but if the disruption in the school gets bad enough, she'll be transferred. So that's still on hold as well. So those are 3 incidents that's happened in 3 different school districts all this school year, and it's only the beginning of November. So that's what I mean when I say that things kind of go in cycles, but this is it. So we've got, if a parent gets angry at you because you didn't give their student a grade that they thought they wanted, a student gets ticked off at you, an old boyfriend or girlfriend, they're using social media to get back at you. The parents are now young enough that they know about social media. They know how to do these searches. They know how to find out what's going on. They know about YouTube. They know about all those things. So my advice to you is to scrub your social media page now. Go back and look at all of your pictures that you've got. Is there something that you don't want to be called into the administrator to be asked about or to explain? Even if it's not going to get you fired, it could cause you great embarrassment. So look at your pictures, look what's posted, scrub it, because you don't want it used against you in any way, shape, or form, and you certainly don't want to lose your job over it. Any questions about that? Okay. So even these do nots are not going to protect you against everything. Okay. Emails, electronic communications. if you're emailing with a student, I would strongly suggest that you must, according to your policy, use your school district email account, not a personal account. Why is that? Because those are all saved, they're all archived. So if you're doing something wrong, they're gonna be able. If someone accuses you of doing something wrong, it's either gonna save you or it's going to nail you, because they can pull up the emails and see whether or not the communications are appropriate or not. Think really hard about using text messages. I used to say don't text messages, but then I started hearing from teachers, or especially like coaches, where they're like, do a group text about practice is going to start 15 minutes late, or I think it's dangerous. I would think twice about it, because when you're text messaging, then the kids have your personal cell phone number. And do you want that? Do you want kids and parents to have your personal cell phone number? And do you want their personal phone number on your electronic device? So I would just think about that. I won't say don't ever do it, but I would think really, really hard. And like I said before, don't use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, or similar applications to communicate with students. Snapchat.
Is there an age, like once a kid graduates from high school, or once they're a certain age, if they reach out to you, then it's okay? A former student?
Well, that's up to you. There's no law or no policy that's going to keep you from doing that. But I think you need to think past just whether or not do you want to friend this person on Facebook. You know, who does that person know? Whose timeline is it going to show up on? Could it show up on a current student? Do they have younger brothers and sisters? You know, what are their connections to the community? I still think it's dangerous to do so. So I would think really, really hard. There's nothing that says you can't, but listen, after this year, I would be very cautious about anything. Yes.
I feel like a student identifying that this may be a stupid question, but are we green light for, is Remind app, is that suitable?
What is it?
The Remind app?
I don't know what that is.
It is, because they don't see your phone number and you don't see their phone number.
And they sign up for it too. They get a code and they sign up for it. It's not public. So we're okay with that? It's a way of communicating with your students or their family members, even if it's just as simple as, even if it's just as simple as relaying an assignment or a due date. Or, I mean, I messaged all the frog dissection photos to all the parents and kids. But I just wanted to make sure we were good there, so.
Because there's no actual phone numbers, like they enter their phone number on this third-party site, you send your stuff to the third-party site that disperses it. That's kind of the difference between you sending a direct text message, where you could, because really the issue is, are you communicating with those numbers outside of this professional conversation?
Right, okay, great.
I think usually if you're texting stuff about school business, education, you know, your classroom, you're normally going to be okay. There's something called Classroom Dojo that I think mostly elementary school teachers use, and I think those sorts of programs, you know, the parents sign up for them, and it's a good way for a teacher to be able to communicate and give points to the, you know, I think those are all okay from what I've seen.
Twitter, that came up with a different group, like when a student sends you a direct message with Twitter, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think where we landed is your Twitter account that you're using to communicate with students needs to be set up with your work email address.
And then keep it all to work issues.
Don't be following Kim Kardashian on it. Like, it needs to be work email and professional people that you're following, professional tweets.
Sure.
And then if can they direct message students back and forth through that account, or is that still kind of no?
I think they can, can't you? You can do direct messages through Twitter.
The only contact I have is through that Remind app, and I don't
Yeah.
even use my phone. I just use my computer for it. So
I think that's a great idea. Use your computer, not your phone. Just be careful. I mean, we don't know what they can do next. We don't know where it's gonna go. You know, who would ever think that, you know, parents were stalking teachers because they're mad at something that happened, but be careful. Okay, so again, use your district email account. It's traceable and it's maintained. Student cannot make a false accusation that any inappropriate communications is going on because it's logged, we can look it up, and you're protected that way. Remember, there's no expectations of privacy when you're using any form of electronic communication.
I would throw this one out there too. There was a year in a building that a parent was upset about a special education process, something that had happened in the school year, and put in a request that wanted a copy of any communication that had their child's name in it from any staff member at any point during the school year. And so the teacher that sent the email that said, so-and-so's mom just sent me another email, she's such a pain in the ass, mom got a copy of that. Mom got a copy of every email that had her daughter's name in it or her name in it from everybody. From teachers, from special teachers, from administrators, from the secretary that said, guess who's late again today, just in like a little flip comment. Any email that had her daughter's name in it. And we had to print them off. And so it said, from so-and-so to so-and-so. And that happens multiple times every school year. So just remember that even that like snide comment to your best friend at school, even though your best friend's not gonna be the one printing it out and turning it in, if for some reason, we had a request come through the other day and it was a topic in the district, and this group wants a copy of any correspondence that has this topic in the thread. And a few people were like, oh man, I know I sent an email that wasn't so filtered and not real excited about that being public now. So just remember that any email you send can be pulled out, printed, shared.
So the school district is subject to the Missouri Sunshine Law, which means that any record that is maintained can be produced unless there's a specific reason not to. So like those records, we would redact other students' names because those would be private. We could do some redaction, but your snide comments is probably not something that we can redact. So just remember, if it's your work email account, then just keep it professional, even if it's, to a colleague and you're just venting, just vent in person. A parent, unless they made they'd have to make a sunshine law request to get those emails. If they just made a request under FERPA, those are not student records, so they wouldn't be produced. But if there's a lawsuit, and you never know when there's gonna be a lawsuit, all of that is discoverable. And under the sunshine law, if they phrase the request correctly, and it's something that's maintained, that we've got the records to produce, we have to produce them. Okay, I know some teachers have created a class Facebook page. I think that's totally fine. You should make sure that an administrator is also part of the Facebook group. And that's a good way to communicate with your class. Just make sure you don't violate FERPA. You can't put specific student information on there, but you can give general class announcements, you can talk about homework assignments, you can, due dates, all of those things, but you're not gonna post the student's work on there, a specific student's work on there with a grade. You're not gonna, so you don't wanna violate FERPA, but that's also an idea that I've seen teachers use. So here's my one more caution. What's on your social media accounts? Look at your pictures, your videos, your messages. What are your privacy settings? Do everything you can anyway to keep yourself safe and private. I already talked about these. I didn't talk on employer curiosity, but lots of employers will Google you, will look at your social media accounts before hiring you. That's something that they are able to do. It's public information, so just remember that. I know some school districts do when they hire. All right. Any other questions on that? Concerns? Horror stories that you'd like to share with the group? Okay. Professional rights and responsibilities. This is something DESE uses. It's one of actually your things that you're evaluated on. I believe it's like whatever your number 8. Actually, I have it right here. Standard 8, professionalism. Quality indicator number 3, professional rights, responsibility, and ethical practices. So my recommendation on this for you, in order to stay where you need to be with regard to your professional responsibilities and ethical practices, is make sure you know the student code of conduct. Make sure you adhere to and align your classroom practices to that code of conduct, and that you manage student behavior. I'll add one more. Make sure that you implement disciplinary actions. You make your referrals in a consistent manner, that you don't let the kid who really gets on your nerves, you're gonna give him a referral before the one who you kind of like. Make sure, consistency is where we get in the most trouble. Be consistent. Know your board policies and procedures. So you're gonna know your code of conduct, and you're also gonna know your board policies and procedures. I know that there are a lot of them, but if you have a question about something, I bet the answer is somewhere in those policies. So go there first. There's a great, on the website, the policies are online, there's a search mechanism. You can search, so you don't have to read every single policy, but if there's a question, pull it up on the website and do a search and see if there's a board policy or procedure on it. Make sure that you know and follow the chain of command, and also just keep an eye on what's going on around you in other classrooms, and make sure your peers are also being compliant.
You guys know where to find those?
On the website, you go to the main page, and you go to About, and you go to Board of Education, and you click on their page. They have board policies and procedures. It's on something that it'll revert you to or send you to the board docs page, but it's all there, and there's a search mechanism, and it's really easy to work with.
Your code of conduct, that should be in your new teacher Schoology folder. You should have that in there if you haven't taken a look through that. This is your reminder.
You should be going over it with your kids at the beginning of the school year and next semester, so take that opportunity to also review it yourself. So you're gonna be familiar with the code of conduct, you're gonna be familiar with board policies and procedures, and you're gonna be familiar with state and federal laws. So recognize, address, and report discriminatory practices. That's where we get in trouble a lot. Well, that when you hear that there's an EEOC or MCHR, that's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Missouri version of that, Missouri Commission on Human Rights. If you know, they'll be in your building sometimes doing investigations. OCR, Office of Civil Rights, when a student claims that they're being discriminated against for some reason, they're the organization that's going to be in doing an investigation. So make sure that you watch and check for discriminatory practices. Also important, we just finished, I think, bullying, what is it called? The October was Bullying Prevention Month, I believe. So make sure you recognize, address, and report bullying behaviors. Be familiar with the bullying. If you look at one policy, or two policies after leaving here, the social media policy that I talked about, and look at your bullying policy. Every year, bullying is the most popular subject with Missouri legislature that I think I've ever seen. And every year they add another requirement for a public school district with regard to bullying. And there are so many really statutory requirements on school districts when it comes to bullying that we have, like, did you know that if you observe or become aware of a bullying incident, you must report that to your school administrator within 2 days? If you don't, you violated statute. Not board policy, that too, because your board policy reflects what the state statute says, but you've literally violated Missouri law because you're required by law to report that within 2 days. So make sure you look at that policy because it reflects state law, and that changes almost every year with additional requirements. Be familiar with FERPA, IDEA, Section 504, Title IX, etc. A good source of information for most of those is the OCR website.
Can you talk real quick about Title IX for those that might not remember?
Title IX is sexual harassment. So we have a Title IX compliance officer in every school. If you see a Title IX violation, you should report it. And there are requirements under the federal laws on how we do investigation on that. There's specific paperwork that needs to be filed, and you as a teacher must report that if you see it. And any other discriminatory, You know, there's Title VI, there's lots of titles and lots of discriminatory practices that all have to be investigated. And then demonstrate ethical behavior. It is ethical to adhere to board policies and the law. It's ethical to act professionally to your colleagues, and it's ethical to protect and advocate for students. So, one reminder, I think you probably might have heard this at some point in your life, but ignorance of the law is not a defense. So ignorance of the law or policy is not a defense either. You're expected to know and follow board policies and law even if you've never read it before. So you can be held responsible. One of the reasons for termination was willful and persistent violation of board policy or state law. So if you have a question, look it up. All right, that's all I have. Any questions? You guys are so quiet. You gave me no good stories to tell the next group.
The stories Cindy shared, I know she said they're not from our district, and they're really not, but she could tell you several stories from our district. So while those sound crazy and far-fetched and like they would never really happen, it would blow your mind. Something that happened probably just down the hall from your classroom. So while it seems like it could never be you, I'm shocked every year that it could be you. So.
I would never use examples from this district because you guys could probably figure out where it happened. So none of those were from your school district. But there are, she's right, Connie's right, there are stories from this school district, and I should have made that clear. All right. Nice to see you all. I hope I always see you in good circumstances.
Make sure you signed in before you head out.
Does
Thank
the
you.
certificate get emailed to us?
Just the what?
Certificate?
You'll get it at the end of the year.
All right. Yes, tell me this.
Okay, so I didn't see the teacher.
I always do, I was like, where did it go?
I was trying to figure out, I was planning a meeting, I know which one of us got fired first.
To go to the long-term sub position.
Right, anyway.
They're like,
I
don't
ever
worry.
take the opportunity.
Yeah, they're like, don't worry about
And it's fun. And then afterwards, I sub basically all around Central, like every day,
Yeah,
just every place.
Yes.
Then I did the long term in kindergarten.
yes.
Yeah, and that was fun. I loved it. I mean, I'll never do it ever again. Ever.
Okay. Hey guys. How are you? Good. You're going good? Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Well, good. 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 Yeah. Still have to figure out what we're doing tomorrow. Oh, just you know, in general, like my class. Details, details. See you. Bye. Okay, Laura Heinrich's looking for you when you have a minute.